We are live. I gotta take care of one piece. Actually, I'll just wait a second. Yep, there it is. Let's close that down. All right, sorry. Yep, we're all live.
Okay, good evening. It's January 18th, 2024. The time is now 6:34 p.m. and this is a meeting of the Finance and Facilities Committee. Let's start with introductions. We'll start with people in the room and then we'll go to the people online. I'm David Warner. I'm the chair of this committee and I'm a member of the Board of Education, parent of a one-time kindergartner who now has a master's degree and has moved on up the line. Steve
Morton, parent of one, sophomore, Woodland Middle High School, and vice president PTA Council.
Elizabeth Sandona, assistant to Dennis Police.
Amy Ashley Moore, district treasurer.
Dennis Pugliese, director of facilities.
Lisa Raymond, assistant superintendent for business.
Hi, Dr. Iverson, superintendent of schools.
Luke Johnson, technical sports specialist.
Online, from my perspective, I see Fred.
Fred Seba, BBS Architects and Engineers.
I see Katie.
Katie McGee, parent of a 9th grader.
Michael.
Mike Messina, BBS Architects.
Carol.
Carol Allen, community member.
Jessica.
Hey everybody, Jessica Muldoon, parent of 2 kids in the district.
Gabriella.
Hi everyone, good evening. Parent of 3 boys, 2 in the district and 1 joining us in September.
Looks like
He will be sorry to clarify, I'll be enrolling him in kindergarten.
Okay. Looks like Aaron.
Hey, yeah, Aaron Schwartz. I'm a community member, and I'm just interested. I have a 6-month-old. I recently moved to the area in the last year or two, so just trying to get involved. Thought I'd listen in.
Very nice.
Good to meet you. Okay, anybody I missed? All right, so this is the Finance and Facilities Committee. It's a combination of 2 committees. One was originally finance, and we do the budget and all things financial. And then there was a separate facilities committee. We decided to make things easier to do by having fewer committees, since we have many committees in the district. And so we have combined them for the past couple of years, and it seems to have worked out pretty well so far. All right, so next order of business is to look at the minutes of the last meeting. Could you bring those up?
1 second.
And for anybody who's got a paper packet, it's the second document right inside right after the agenda. There's 9 pages of agenda, and then there's the minutes of the December 21st meeting. So we'll scroll through it and pay attention to anything that you think needs to be amended. Okay, so the last meeting, the attendees were David Warner, Lisa Raymond, Dennis Pugliese, Chris Vallon, Katie McGee, Amy Ashley Moore, Tracy Maris, Steve Morton, Jessica Muldoon, Dave Bridgelaw, Fred Seba, Carol Allen, Michael Messina, Giovanna Izaguirre, Elizabeth Sandona, and Luke Johnson. We reviewed an updated project cost spreadsheet for facilities projects that accounts for inflation, since we have a building conditions survey every 5 years. Our architects and engineers go soup to nuts over every building to see what needs to be fixed, and then they do it again 5 years later, and by that time the costs of the things that they estimated have gone up, and we're nearing the end of that cycle. So it was worthwhile to update the costs as we figure out what projects to do next. We polled the committee regarding phase 3 facilities project options, and we asked the 3 questions: what projects should be included in phase 3? When should phase 3 begin? And how much risk of a bond vote failure are willing to accept? And we'll go over that again tonight. We now have a list of things that people thought were the most likely things for the next project. We reviewed various facilities projects that are in progress. The construction management RFP, we're gonna hire somebody to try and manage our projects, and the money for that will actually come out of the projects themselves. The Woodlands Middle High School security vestibule, the roof mansion, the masonry, the phase one, mostly ventilation and a little bit of roofing project. But we're going to go over these projects again tonight to see if there's any change. We talked about the water main and a fire hydrant project, the Bailey roof, which a lot of our paperwork is still kind of in the hopper at NYSED, and we're waiting for their approval before we can go forward with construction. And of course, we talked about the science lab and funding for a partial project on that. We talked a little bit about the grade level reconfiguration plan. That was kind of halted because we thought that our enrollment had sort of topped out for the moment. We'll talk about that a little more tonight. We went over smaller projects, and I believe there were, there was the after, at ECP, it's like, how do you correct things so you won't have a flood again? We talked about Highview had its parking lot paved and striped. RJ Bailey, they expanded the garden in the area so that when spring comes, you can have a larger garden plot. We talked about things that needed to be fixed in Woodlands, and of course the infamous bus garage, the possible migration to electric buses in the future, and what we do about that. And Lisa Ringman went over various finance issues, who we got money from. Tom Avenatti, the former assemblyman, had given us $500,000 for RJ Bailey. Andrea Stewart-Cousins gave us $500,000 to be used in that bond we just passed for upgrades to the track. We talked about the American Rescue Plan monies that we used partially for phase one to put to get ventilation into all the buildings as if they were modern, same standard as if they were new buildings instead of old buildings. We talked a little bit about the audit committee. We talked about the facilities funds. We have $5.9 million, which we can devote to capital in a capital project reserve. And we also have a smaller repair reserve. It was $742,000 in it. And we talked about the Edgemont Incorporation issue, and that issue has progressed significantly. And Dr. Carol Allen is here, and so we'll talk about that a little bit later tonight. So does anybody see anything in here that needs to be amended?
I move that we approve the minutes as presented.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes? Yvonne, something?
I think she said aye.
Aye, okay. Those opposed? We have minutes. All right. Okay. Then the next item on the agenda is the phase 3 proposal. So we've gotten through phase 1, and that construction is largely done. Phase 2, the roof project for pretty much every school in the district. There's some portion of the roof folded into that. And then the tennis courts and the track upgrades, and that required a bond, which people voted for, and that is passed. And therefore, we've gone into the detailed design work, and now we're working on things coming out, getting approval from New York State Education Department. And so then the question is, we're not only pushing the boat, we're also kind of steering the boat. What's the next project? And at the last meeting, we came up with a number of suggestions for what should be there, and we asked that our architects from BPS go over each and upgrade and update the costs for each one, and talk about it. And Mike Messina has been doing a lot of work in a very short amount of time. So you will see for each, you have a chart here, and for on the left-hand side, you have a science labs, priority 1, priority 2, exterior shells, mansion ventilation, ECP classrooms, soccer fields. Those are the main things that people brought up before. there's an updated cost, and the second column, there's a file. If you have access to the Google Drive, and we'll look at some of these documents for detailed descriptions of each thing, and there are some notes in that column on the right-hand side. So Mr. Messina, I'd like you to walk us through this. I'd like us to go through project by project, and we'll try and bring up the file so everybody can see what you've come up with. And then we'll go from there and decide, work on what we want to do. So can we first bring up Woodland Science Room's budget 2024.pdf?
1 second. This one?
Yes. Okay, Mr. Messina,
Okay.
take.
1 second, so let me just share the screen.
Oh,
Nope.
There you go.
Okay. Good evening. So one of the first items that we were asked to give updated estimates for were the existing science labs at the high school and middle school. So you'll see on this spreadsheet, we break out the square foot cost for the existing interior renovation work. And that number of $125 a square foot is just for fit finishes, HVAC, electrical upgrades. It's not moving walls around. It's not reconfiguring the rooms in any way. It's just updating the room itself. Then you'll have separate line items for casework. So science casework at a high school level, unfortunately, is very expensive. It's very detailed. There's lots of equipment that goes into it. So those numbers are pretty big. And same thing for the prep rooms. You have a subtotal there. Every one of our numbers at the bottom there are fully loaded. So you'll have your construction contingencies, contractor general conditions, escalation, A&E fees, owner soft costs, which includes a CM, construction management for future projects. So the total proposed budget for this project is about 5.8 million, a little under that. If you were to consider
Explain what casework is, please.
casework is all the cabinetry in the room, all the lab stations, the resin tops, the wall hung units, all the drying racks, and everything that goes into that. It's usually fully oak cabinetry, so it's high-end, high-quality lab casework. It's probably similar to what you have currently in the room that's held up for the last 30 years. It's that style, that type of casework.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Can I ask a question? You're talking about just one room, is that correct?
No, this is all the rooms in both floors of the high school, middle school. So there's a total of 9 science rooms and 6 prep rooms. So some of the rooms will be situated where they share a common prep room. Some of them don't currently. It's just, like I said before, it's keeping the original configuration of the space the way that it is. It's ripping it out. It's doing floors, ceilings, patching walls, where we take furniture out off the wall. It might not go back in the same spot, so you're going to patch walls, that type of thing. But there's a total of 9 in the building.
And you're gonna hear my ignorance in this, but there's obviously different types of lab rooms in those 9 rooms. Is that accurate? Like
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So, is there, if this is a total project, is there also a breakdown of like how to do some of them in stages and different cost?
There's not currently. We didn't get into that detail. Typically, when we do science wings, you're going to do an economy of scale. You're going to try to do as much as you can because you will get better pricing that way, especially on the furniture end. But the numbers themselves do not break out, a separate one chemistry room or one biology room. It's a in total science program that's there.
Yeah, I don't know if I guess Mr. Pugliese or Mr. Smith would have, but I don't know if like every single room is in disrepair or if there's certain labs that are worse than others. It's just because it's such a high number, that's all. But thank you. Okay, sorry, if anyone else has questions.
But
Go ahead.
but to follow on that, I mean,
theoretically, a chem lab might be different than a biology lab. And does every classroom need to become a lab per se? I know that may then become a classroom space issue if we have a lab that people travel to on lab days. I don't know, but I don't even know, actually. We have lab days. I mean, do they stay in the room where they're being taught for their labs? So I'm just wondering, again, as far as.
Do you
the
want to
scope
scroll down?
and-
Isn't there a picture of the actual labs?
Good point. That is the floor plan
Just
here.
scroll down and you can talk us through it. Okay, I see it's highlighted.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have really detailed drawings of your buildings. There's just not good records. But typically, to your point, a chemistry lab may have more casework than a earth science lab. But in the budgeting stages at this high level, wherever you see a number, per classroom, if you break it out per classroom, the averages for the high end to the low end is going to be someplace in the middle. So that we're a budget of $200,000 for casework per room. For chemistry lab, you might come in at $250, and then earth science lab, you might come in at $150. So you don't necessarily have that level of breakout at this point at a high level of budgeting purposes. But if later on, when we get into the actual design and you're sitting with the teachers and whoever is on these committees to do the design work, you may decide, you know what, we don't use this much casework, or we don't have the need for this many lab tables, or we want to put, instead of fixed tables, but movable tables. So you may change the way that you teach the classroom, which would affect the price potentially. But at this point in juncture, the question was, how much would it cost to redo the science rooms? It's kind of doing apples to apples. So the way you teach now is the way we're presuming you're going to continue to teach in the future.
And the square footage estimated here is based on the actual
the floor
plans?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. The question about breaking it up, you could potentially break it up per floor, which is something maybe I would recommend if you wanted to make that number a little bit smaller and easier to digest. Maybe we do the third floor first and you do the second floor in the following, phase to kind of break it up that way. But I wouldn't necessarily take a room on one floor, skip a couple of rooms, do another room on the same floor to try to make it work. It's better to just let them gut it all per floor per chance, or do both floors at the same time and do it that way. But of course, there's no right or wrong way. You can skin it any way you want. It's just that the numbers may jive and go up higher if you decide to do one room every year or every 2 years, whatever it is.
We also don't know if you want more chemistry rooms than what you have now or less chemistry rooms. So that's why we would typically use an average so they can be across the board. If you get more specific with us, we can get a little bit more specific with some of our estimates. But right now, they're general estimates, as Mike said, on averages across the board.
All right, I have a question. There was $174,000 pledged from Mary Jane Shimsky. And part of that was a gas line restoration for one of the labs. And I think there were some iWatch stations. Is there overlap between that project and this?
No. The gas line in that one room is really a repair. You're replacing something in kind with what currently or what used to work in that space. So in reality, it's not really something you need to get a permit for or SCD approval on. It's really a repair work. It would get you to a point where you can reutilize the gas line in that room. But when you go to planning and redoing these classrooms, to Fred's point, you may change the way the room's laid out completely. The gas may be on one side of the room and you have to add it to the other side of the room because it's just what you want to do through the progress of design. And so you may touch, the individual stations, but the supply of the gas is really what we're talking about in that $175,000 grant money budget.
Okay, so no subtraction problem here. Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, are there?
May I make a comment, please?
Sure.
We started talking about the science rooms because when we had a tour a couple of years ago, I think it was now, we were told that a couple labs were not working. I don't recall our hearing that all of the rooms needed to be renovated. Now, is there a problem that all of the rooms need to have major fixes done to make them functional, or are we still talking about just a couple of specific rooms that are non-operational that we're trying to put back in operation?
Michael?
At this point, it's unknown. I really don't know, other than the quantity and the number of prep rooms that you have. The conditions of those rooms, they were on our BCSR report, and I believe they were a level 2, so it was a priority 2 item. It may not have been all 9 of them. It may have been 5 or 6 of the rooms that we identified that were in the worst condition, and maybe you could leave 3 of them out. But they were all identified at the last time we walked through back in 2020. Unfortunately, I wasn't part of that. I can't comment any further on that.
Okay.
Was the comment that got made when you did your walkthrough specifically related to the gas in those rooms, or did it have something to do with other systems as well?
I know it was predominantly related to the gas, but I don't recall the entire conversation.
You know, I guess,
There are some water issues too. A lot of the faucets have, the waste is clogged up over the years. A couple of the faucets, say if there's 7 faucets in a room, maybe they're down to 3 working properly.
So
A
what,
lot of the casework is rotted and it's.
so what I get from people, hi, I graduated and I got into Harvey Mudd. And then, and when I got there, I realized that all the time that I've been sitting in my lab class, my classes, watching a demo, other people in schools that were better outfitted were doing the tasks themselves. So now I have to work twice as hard to try and make up for the fact that I didn't go through a bunch of things in high school that everybody else has. Okay, so
And-
that's, yeah.
yeah, and I think we all have heard those stories, but more importantly, I think effective communication needs to happen. Someone needs to talk to the chair of the science department, the principal, have some real conversations, and the science teachers about actually what do they need to get the students to the level of competitiveness when they're with their cohorts in college. And we're trying to produce students that have competence, science education. Watching a video is not going to do that. And I think our departments do a great job in making up for what's not there, but we need to know what they would love to see and what they feel they need. So, we're not scientists or science teachers. They have to communicate this to Mr. Pugliese, but maybe even come to the next meeting. Yes.
Okay.
I would also want to add that we should be talking to college science professors. Because they know what they need
Right.
to come out of high school. Not maybe the high school teachers are doing the best they can here, but we need to know what the colleges are expecting now. So I think we need to stretch it even further, even talk to people at companies around Westchester and say especially with chemistry, what's going on now. You have AI that's with chemistry. Maybe we have to put in things that have to be associated with computers more than just a flash.
Like what's in science, what's happening in science that we need to catch up on. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess BBS is doing this work based off of just a general ask, but maybe it needs to be more specific.
We need more detail,
Yeah.
okay? So now the other thing I will mention historically, I think it was Excel aid, but we had a limited amount of aid and we had to spread it out amongst multiple science labs. And so if you go and look in 3 or 4, I think the chemistry labs were primary in that, you look at the front of the room and there'll be the front demonstration station where the teacher makes the demonstrations, and you'll notice that the asbestos tile, there's a line in the room, and the last 4 or 5 feet of the room is new, and the rest of the lab where all the students do most of their work is not. And so then that led to, okay, you've got this one piece of each lab that's functional and the rest doesn't work so well. So you end up with, a spectator sport science. So I know that was a political compromise amongst the different science teachers. Nobody could, claim all of that limited funding for themselves. We might be in a little better position now, so we may be able to do a little bit more. Okay, are there other, I can see we need to go and talk to some science teachers and some science professors if this turns out to be the thing we go for next. But are there any other questions at this point?
Mr. Warner, could I suggest that we more specifically state we need a room by room assessment of what's needed in each room in order to bring the room up to standards so that science can be taught according to the mandatory curriculum? And then once that's done, we can talk about, do we want to add a little bit more to move it into the future? But right now, we're not meeting basic standards, and that's our goal, in my opinion.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I would just like to add to that too, that you're probably beyond the life expectancy of those rooms as far as the material and casework and equipment that's in there. Chances are that those rooms are 20, 25, 30 years old. Whenever you go and touch these spaces, everything will be brought up into the newest and greatest technologies and whatnot, smart boards and whatever. But just keep in mind, this exercise is really just a high level, give you an idea what the budget, what might be around, and getting into more detail per room really happens after you decide to go for this project, that then we start to fine tune and you'll see we're going to spend, 30% of the budget is for the chemistry labs and only 10% is for earth science labs. And that's probably normal because you don't have as much equipment. But you still stay within that large umbrella of the budget itself. So if we're at 5.8 million, that we're saying is that you can do all your rooms to whatever future design that you need it to be. You'll have the funding for it in place there between the contingencies and the escalation and everything else. You should be covered.
I understand what you're saying, but with the size of the request for money, we can foresee that it will be difficult to sell a project of this size to the community. So we need to scale it back now so that we, if possible, that we will be able to sell it to the community and get the necessary money as quickly as possible so we can get these rooms up to speed so the students can learn as quickly as possible.
Right, Mr. Messina, what the way you're talking is ideal, and that would be wonderful. However, we do have a large portion of the community that cannot even afford the current taxes that are. So we, and you've been at these meetings, how many different things are in need. So
Understood.
It's not about having just having the money and taking care of everything. We don't have that. So we need to stop. We need to figure out, as Dr. Allen said, room by room, we need to do this. And we should also be looking, Ms. Raymond, for funding, or anybody else, if anybody knows of any funding and that's willing to support. We're talking about our elected officials, but there's also sometimes companies will like a school district like ours to pour a little bit of money into and make it a PR thing for them, whatever the situation is, but we do need to have those minimum standards met. And so that's what we're looking at. So I don't know if we need to shift your focus or what can happen on your level, but to look at how do we at least make the minimum standards, and you got to talk to science department for that.
Okay.
So if you give us more information, we can refine our estimates. So I think that's good. You get in touch with your science chair people and talk to them a little bit, find out where the needs are. And then let us know, and we'll put some estimated costs to it.
Okay. Other questions on science labs? All right, priority 1 and 2 BCS items. We need to open up another file. So DCSD phase 3 repairs. This is the Bridgelaw package. So Dave Bridgelaw is a committee member with a list of 40 or so items. We've prioritized all of the hundreds of items on our building condition surveys, and he took high-end items, priority 1 and 2 items, emphasizing safety, plumbing, stormwater control. Water is the enemy. So let's take a look at that. GCSD phase 3 repairs. PBS comments.xlsx, So what's happened is he submitted a spreadsheet, it's an Excel, Excel spreadsheet,
Phase three?
the one spreadsheet, right?
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay, and the architects have taken a look at it and commented on his comments.
There you go.
Okay. If we get everything on the screen.
I'll do, hold on a second. There you go.
Okay, we're, you put your, it does look different. You put your comments, well.
Is there a last
21,
sheet?
28 project update within last month.
If you go to the last sheet,
Check
put
that. Yeah, it does look different. Okay, so we're looking for this is the wrong.
just go to see if there's the last sheet. No, okay.
Wait, hold on.
That's
This is
the
the wrong one.
project update.
This is the wrong one.
This is the wrong file.
Yeah, last second. I'll try and open it again. There we go.
That's better. Okay. Right, so on the far left, you see, you know, what the priority is for each item. The references and where in the building conditions survey it's found. They describe the item, they had come up with an old cost, there's an updated cost in the green column to the right. The why column is, you know, why do this, or various comments from Dave. And then BBS notes on the right are the architects coming back and talking about that. All right, go ahead and walk us through that, Mike.
Okay, so the first building is the ECP building, Early Childhood Center. One of the things on the BCS report, just to make note, when you see the BCS number, they correspond, number 39, for example, they correspond to different parts of the building or components of the building. So one of the very first things I looked at was that if we're pulling a number out of the BCSR and there's something else that really should go with it, associated with it, I added that in my comments. You know, just for example, if you're doing masonry work, 66, 67, for example, on the, sorry, go back to, yeah, thank you. On Early Childhood Center, you see 65, the next item. There may be other items in the 60s that were capital items that would make sense to do at the same time. So some of my comments when we go over it now might reference that. Just so you know, when you're reading the BCSR, there is some rhyme or reason to it. You know, we do categorize it, we prioritize things, and it's just, there is a rhyme or reason to it. So a couple of these items that were on the list that were suggested were the RPZ backflow prevention devices. This item happens to appear at every building. So one of the comments was, if you're doing one building, lump them all together, do all of them at all the buildings. Again, economy of scale, you get the best bang for your buck by doing that. So that was just a comment initially. And you'll see, I think he even mentioned it as he went through the buildings. Makes sense to be able to do them all. The next item on here is allowance repair for the basement. This has to do with exterior work. It would require a structural study potentially to get more into detail as what's required, but the budget we put together should cover it as well. Could you just scroll over a little bit to the right, just so I can see the notes on that side? Thank you. So it's a little bit hard to read. Could you just make it a little bit bigger?
Sure.
Excuse me, yeah, can we hide, well, can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, sorry, before I'm gonna suggest that Luke, if you could not do that yet, I'm gonna have you hide some columns, but before we have you hide some columns, stop.
Yeah.
I just want to verify, when it's marked major repair, that doesn't necessarily mean we can use the repair reserve fund, correct? Like a different.
No, not necessarily.
Thank you. Okay, so now all those columns are H through like L, maybe we could just collapse those and then that way you can see the notes at the same time.
Whoops, hold on a second.
Like hide them.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, speak quickly.
Hold them out a little bit, there you go.
That's fine.
That's good. Thank you. So to continue down the list here, there's some drainage work in the courtyard. There's some exterior work for accessibility at the basement level, and there was a snaking of some piping lines to allow underground piping to flow properly. So those were 5 items that he identified on this list. So we updated the numbers off of the BCSR report, and some of my comments I'll go over with you now. Item 105, which was an ADA compliant fire and smoke detection system for $130,000. I was adding that into it because of the fact that I just want to make note, when you submit things to the state and they have your BCS report, right? They're the ones that make us do this exercise and submit it to them. A lot of times I feel that whoever's reviewing the scope of work, and they'll look at your list, and if you're not touching some of the ADA non-compliant items, which are priority 1 items, and you're jumping around a little bit, they may say, well, I want you to do something about that. So I just added that in here as just a note. Doesn't mean you have to do it this time around, but just to consider it in the future going forward, that some of the priority 1 ADA items you may want to include in a potential bond going forward. Item 112 was replace the ramp to classroom 2 for ADA compliance of $40,000. That was another thing that I added to this list. Again, you're touching things that are adjacent to it. You're doing some exterior work. It makes sense to do that as well. For another $40,000 was the line I'm on there. So it may add $170,000 that ECP if you were to consider doing that.
So your bottom line total does not include those items you have in the notes?
It does not. No, it does not. These are just strictly my comments when I was looking at the list.
Okay.
You could decide to just do the list and that's it, and that's fine. But I just wanted to put my 2 cents in after reviewing what was selected. The other comment I had in regards to 44R is that there was an item 40R, which was to connect to a municipal sewer system for $64,000. If you're going to do 44R, it makes sense to do 40R, in my opinion. For a total add of $64,000. So that's just another comment. You could say, let's not do 44R, and then you don't do 40R on the list. So that was all I had for ECP. You can see the numbers and the breakdown accordingly for those.
But it's not a requirement that the district do the suggestions on the right-hand side. They're just suggestions that if you're going to do something, maybe you should consider doing this. So as Mike said, you don't have to do those, but it just might make sense from economy of scale if you do them at the same time.
Okay, so suggestions not in total. And so we'll have to add it. Well, you've actually got a subtraction down there, I see. So
yep.
So we'll have to take a look at, what this does.
All right. So if there's not any questions about ECP, I'll continue. Okay, so Jackson, you had some masonry work in 66 and 67, has to do with exterior mortar joints and masonry. Item number 75 was, again, masonry cracks in the kitchen. That's inside the building, not outside the building, just to you're clear. And then 91 was to rebalance the heat in the building. And if you scroll down a little bit, please. Item 50 was to go back up just a little bit more so I can see all of Jackson. Thank you. Yep, perfect. 50 was to replace a damaged fence around one of the basins outside. And then 102 was to replace the photo cells on some lighting outside and some wall packs. So it's kind of all over the place, right? Most of it's outside, some of it's inside. One of my first comments was to recommend, again, adding priority 1 item 39, which is the RPZ at this building. If you're going to do it for one, do it for all. And that would add $64,000 to Jackson. And just what I said before, you'll see my general note, economy of scale, similar size and scope of work. It makes sense to do them all together. Because going down to item 91, this item I suggest omitting until after the EPC project is complete. They, as part of the EPC, they're gonna be changing a lot of the HVAC building components in here and doing actual weather tightening up the building. So it would make sense if you're gonna do that, to do it after the ECP project, in my opinion. So that would take that $51,000 off of the list. And that was the only other comment that I had for Jackson.
Would the front canopy light not also be in the AP, is that not in the APC then?
And it's not in the EPC, no, no. All right. Any other questions about Jackson? Okay, continue to Highview. If you could just scroll down, please. Okay, Highview is a big one. Okay, thank you. Existing elevator not functioning, make it ABA compliant. So that's one of the big items on there. Repair, next item is repair OPTT PT unit to ensure proper operation. Replace non-operational rooftop exhaust fans. A couple more exhaust fan items in there. So you'll see 88.1, 88.2. That makes sense to do all those together. If you're going to do them, do one, do them all. 94 was the grease trap in the kitchen. 66 was outside grade level water coming into the building. So there's some more masonry work there as a 60s item. Same thing with 67 is repointing. 76 was some carpet replacement. 101 was provide electrical circuits to the second grade area. 101, I guess that's a mistypo. Replace older flushometers at 97R. Thank you. So there's a hodgepodge of things here too. Some inside, some outside, some plumbing, whatnot. It's just kind of haphazardly picked from our BCSR report, which is fine. My only comments here were the same comment about the RPZ. And then if we're going to do 87 item, 87.2, it makes sense to do 87.1, which is to provide a unit vents at 3.4 million. I understand it's a big number. But I would also do 87.3, which is the gym air handling unit, and 87.4, which is natural gas detection. So it's a lot of it is all encompassing of itself, and they're all the same systems in the building. If you do one little portion of it, you kind of neglecting the other stuff, and you're going to go back later on to touch things similar to it. So it makes sense to group those together in an economy of scale. So maybe if the numbers are too high, decide let's not do any of the 87 BCS items and wait till another future bond. But that was one of the comments there. So you can see the ad is quite large, 4.6 million. The only other comment I had was on item 94. I would suggest doing 94.2, which is the air gap drains at the kitchen for another $6,000. If you're going to do the grease traps, do the air gap drains as well. So that was all I had for Jackson. I'm sorry, for Highview. Any questions about that? Okay. Woodlands. Okay, so Woodlands, RPZ again. Fill and mat sink, art wing, music exterior doors. Some more door hardware, missing actuators on the boiler room, combustion air, intake dampers to install preparation, repair leak valves over the main electrical switch gear, broken exterior sanitary lines. So a lot of plumbing items on here, electrical circuits in 4 rooms, repair shutdown of the gym unit, tune up burners to eliminate combustion fumes, and replace bad bearings on the second floor HV unit. Again, all the comments that I had for this was the RPZ, which actually the gentleman that put this together had the same comment at this point when he realized it was do them all. And suggested adding on line item 94, doing 94.2, which is the air gap drains at the kitchen. Again, the same comment as the other building. Any questions here? All right, going on to Bailey. Thank you. RPZ, again, provide covers to exposed cast iron radiators for safety, and first floor window lintels and replacement. A lot of window lintels over there for water infiltration. It's really for structural too, but So the only added comment I had for this was the same one I had previously was for 90.1, you should do 90.2 at the same time, replace the steam piping at the addition for $192,000 as an add.
What's the demarcation of the addition? Where?
Piping steam pipes to addition. There must be separate wings that were built, and there were. So
Yeah.
when we say addition, we're not talking about the main original building. We're talking
I
about.
believe when you look at the front of the building,
Okay.
I think the left-hand side of the building is an addition.
I don't know, 10 years later.
Any other questions about Bailey? Okay, and for the finally, the admin building, remove and replace steel beams to support the walkways, so some structural issues with sagging, floors and whatnot. And the last item was to repair or replace the boiler oil filter system. So the only thing I said here was suggest omitting the one line item for 65, being that there are other 60s line items in the BCSR report that go hand in hand with that. So understand if you do one little thing, you can do it that way. I would just suggest lumping more items together for, again, for economy of scale. You going in there, you're touching the building, it makes sense to go and do other things along with it at the same time. So that was it. So the number, you can see the original number at 2.1 million. For today's dollars going forward, would be 2.6 million. And that was it. I added one other line on here about the RPZ at the Teacher Center, because that was also in our BCSR report. So I believe the Teacher Center wasn't in his initial Excel spreadsheet. And that should be everything on there.
Okay, so then depending on whether or not we want to take your $4 million suggested addition, this doesn't drift too much higher than I would expect from the rate of inflation. Okay, great. Any other questions regarding priority 1 and 2, the bridge wall package? Okay, moving on. I called it exterior shelves. So there was a request, you know, it's like we had driving rain, right? So we know we're going to replace the roofs in phase 2, but if the windows and the masonry are bad, then you're going to have leaks through the walls. And so then the question is, what does it look like if you look at exterior masonry, doors and windows - budget 2024.pdf. So go find that file.
Yes.
And that price tag looks fairly hefty.
I think you just passed that. Go back to the top line.
Right
That
there.
one, yep. That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay. So this list, like David suggested, was all the exterior masonry, doors, and windows. So we pulled them off of the BCS report. I put the priority in there that corresponds with the line item, just so you can see that they're predominantly all priority 1 and 2 items, which would be year 1, year 2 in our breakdown. The 2020 original number is there, and then the new number for 2024. So early childhood program, you'll see some of these line items are the same as we just saw. The buckling of the stucco false timber rake boards is a new item. Reconstruct the stone wall and entry steps, and replace the ramp to the ADA for compliance. So those are really the only exterior items at the ECP building that we identified that would be considered exterior masonry, doors, and windows. So that would be at $450,000. Going down to Jackson. So you've got masonry repair, repointing and chimney cap, ramp transition to create exterior doors to meet ADA compliance, replace all entry doors and storefronts, and replace all windows. those numbers again correspond to the entire building. So you're probably at end of life at most of these buildings. They're single pane glass windows in a lot of places. So those numbers are pretty big, but that corresponds to the age and the need for it. So you're a little over $4 million in today's dollars for that building. Going to Highview, you've got a line item here for crack seal and repoint masonry at northeast corner of building, repoint in the chimney cap, replace all the windows. And what I did was I took out the $450,000 that we allocated. That's up at the state right now for a permit for I believe it's the 3rd grade wing. Keep me honest, Dennis, is that right?
Yep.
Okay. So the 3rd grade wing is taken out of that number, and then replace all the entry doors and storefronts. So that brings you to 2.36 million for that building. Woodlands High School, fortunately, it's a very large building, and the windows are all original, and storefront and curtain wall systems. It's large quantities. Number is very big. 11 million just for that. Repair stucco at kitchen service court and replace exterior entry doors as noted. So not all the doors need to be replaced there, but we did identify a quantity for that. So the total number for Woodlands would be about $11.5 million.
Okay.
And I would just say for the two, being that we were talking before about the sticker shock or trying to break these up into smaller pieces. Windows, you can definitely break up into smaller pieces. You can do it by wing, which was what I would recommend doing. You know, there's different areas of the building that have different systems. Some windows are curtain wall systems, some windows are ribbon wall systems. So there's some masonry below them, but some of them are curtain wall, which means it goes from bottom floor all the way up to the top floor. It's all in one big unit that gets swapped out. We could break out the high school into separate areas and get that number more manageable. If you tell us, you know, we really want to do like a $5 million window job, we could see how much we could do with the building for $5 million. So maybe that's an approach to take going forward if some of these numbers jump up at you.
Trustee Warner, isn't the page missing for RJ Bailey?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. There's a page 2. RJ Bailey, thank you. So steel lintel replacement, and there's a variance right now for your current rescue windows that they don't include replacement. It's just more of a repair variance submission for $360,000. And the admin building, just scroll down a little bit more. Again, the number here is pretty big, but there's a lot of work there. There's a lot of masonry, stonework, repointing, steel beam replacements, reinforcement of sagging slope floors, more masonry, window replacement throughout, and exterior door replacement for a total of just under $3 million. And the total for all the buildings, just exterior windows, doors, and masonry, you're looking at a scope of around $22 million.
That doesn't include soft costs or anything like that, right?
No, these are fully loaded numbers. These are fully loaded. It does. So this is fees, this is
contingencies,
is included.
escalations, soft
Yep.
costs, all of that is
All that.
included already.
Yep.
Okay, so that's
All inclusive.
yeah. All right, thank you. Other questions on this? Because obviously, the way we're thinking right now, this is not going to get all done all at once, even if it is the most popular item. Okay, fair enough. Then moving on to mansion ventilation. And I know you gave us there's a big sheet, administration building, 24.
This one, 24 update. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And it's items 88.1 through 88.5, not the whole Megillah, just the portion for ventilation.
Yep. Thank you. Yep. So the ventilation portion is in the 88.1 column through 88.5. So there's 5 items there that have to do with fresh air, exhaust fans, HVAC that's missing in areas, and throughout the building, right? Assuming 30 additional spaces total in the building for HVAC that needs it. So that number, what was it, David? I don't remember the total off the top of my head. I think it was like 2.5 million, something like that.
$1 million was what you put in your email.
Yep. So that's the total of those 5 items in that list there. And that's again fully loaded.
So that's just for the ventilation, but what about the floors, the roofs, the walls that or ceilings that need to be redone in order to move back in there? That's not in here?
That's not in there, no. We were just asked about the ventilation. So that's the ventilation portion of that facility. To do other parts of the job, if you scroll down to the very bottom of the page, you'll see the number that we assigned to it as part of the BCSR. It's much larger. 2.8 million. And that gets you everything fixed up. So
That's just priority 1 though, Mike?
this is just priority 1. I believe it's just priority 1 that's on here. Yeah. Keep scroll back up again, please.
So before you could reoccupy the building, it's at least 2.8.
At least. And again, it depends on what you were in there before. The floors weren't as bad, or probably out of level in some areas, but you've had a lot of water damage that probably made conditions worse. So there's areas of the building you might not want to occupy because it would be too uncomfortable working in there. So it's just something.
I had this ambition to restore everything, and now my expectations have sort of dropped to the level of, okay, can we make it safe and all right for the administration to move in and take people out of the high school basement and put them back in the mansion and work from there. Okay, so we need to know what it would take to be able legally and safety wise to reoccupy with just the administrative personnel. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for a total there. Are there any questions regarding the mansion?
No, but I also want to be clear, I think the mansion over the years has been used for multiple different things. People that are around now are more familiar with the ECP extension that was there, but over the years, there's been like alternative high schooling there. There's been like adult programs out of there. So the mansion has a wide range of possibilities. But I agree with you that, just minimally getting it open and safe enough to have our administrative personnel there. And then, year by year, there can be pieces that are added. The mansion didn't close one day based off of one issue. It's been years of different degradation. So it's going to take years to restore it and get it to a nice place. There's plenty of opportunity and things for the mansion that we could do. So.
Okay, other questions or comments regarding the mansion?
No, but they're talking, so I don't know did you guys have something, Police and Raymond, about the mansion or no?
Where's the elevator replacement?
That was a major, well, now that was an issue for years as well.
ADA compliant. There was an elevator lift. I don't believe we have to take it out anymore. I think it might be gone. I think Mike Falcone may have removed it.
So how does it become?
Basically, there was what you would consider an unsafe elevator by modern standards. It was a lift. You pull somebody out of a wheelchair, they'd be on a little chair with a seat belt, and then you go up the side of it's basically like a fireman's pole in reverse.
So how do we make sure that when it's open minimally, that it's still ADA compliant for staff or administration or whatever?
Right, does this plan include putting the elevator back? Or improving it or whatever?
Or coming into the back entrance. That was the idea. You could get away with a lift that would put you up about 5 or 6 feet if you came into the back of the building.
Hello, Miss Messina or Siva? Does this include ADA compliance with an elevator?
So there was, I'm looking for it now. There was a line item in here for a LULA, which is a limited use, limited occupant elevator. I'm just looking for that line item. Because we did identify it. You know, it's something that you can look at in the BCSR. Year one, priority one for the admin building is really all of your critical life safety, getting the building back together again. And I was just looking at the bottom line for that. That priority one total was actually 4.8 million, and that was back in 2020. So to add the percentages to it, it probably brings it up over $5 million. And that includes things like your fire alarm system, carbon monoxide detection that you don't have there, things like that. In addition to all the HVAC issues that are in the building. So there was a dead end staircase I see there that had to be fixed as well. A dead end corridor rather.
Okay, so we're going to.
I'll find that to answer your question about the elevator. I remember seeing it. Bear with me. There was a lot of numbers crunching over the last 2 weeks. So everything starts to blend together.
Carol?
I hope that we will prioritize taking care of the needs for the spaces that are currently occupied by students before we start talking about moving administrators out of the space where they are and putting them back in the previous location.
Yeah, I think the student spaces are a priority, Dr. Allen, but remember the administrations are currently in student spaces too. So part of this is like all related, that if they can actually get out of a student school, certain.
I understand that, but I don't hear anyone saying that Woodlands is suffering because that space has been given to the administrators. Where I do hear things about suffering in other locations because of ventilation problems or heating problems or possible mold problems. So I'm hoping that we can address those that directly impact the students in areas of high need, like science labs or elevator in Highview that doesn't work.
There is some suffering going on, but it's not something that we're going to talk about publicly. There are some personnel items that I think if the configuration were a little bit different, we would not be having certain issues. But I think more to the point, we were concerned that our enrollment was increasing and that we might need to move students around and would need additional classroom space. However, I think the enrollment that Lisa was going to talk to us about has flattened out. So that's not as urgent as we thought it was. Is that correct, Lisa?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, other questions or comments about mansion ventilation? Yes, Steve.
No, I'm always been 50-50 on the men's anyway. Has there any thought of adding an addition to Woodlands for the administration and how much it would be? Because this at 6.2, then they're gonna find 2.8, and this is going into $15-16 million eventually. Can you drop a steel box and how much would it cost to get an office extension?
Well, if you look at the ECP edition in Leo Jackson,
Right,
it gives
exactly.
you
That's what
an
I'm saying.
idea about how much things cost.
Right. But
So
what I'm
why don't
saying
we
is-
move on to that, and then you can use that as a as a case in point. ECP classrooms at Leo Jackson, look for updated LFJ pre-K .pdf for 2024 in the parentheses. Luke?
Yes, I'm looking for it. 1 second. Updated. LFJ, pre-K? This one, right?
Updated LFJ.
Okay. So this, we looked at this last year, I believe, as well. But these numbers were just updated for 2024. You'll see there's 2 different scenarios. One's an addition of about 11,700 square feet, and the other one's a little bit smaller. But the new number now would be about 14.5 million, which includes the playground, in this layout of option A. And if you scroll down to option B, you'll see the footprint's a little bit smaller. It's about 8,700 square feet. And the new number is about $11 million.
Now, is there a requirement for a certain number of square feet if you're in a special needs class that's greater than the requirement for a regular ed student?
I believe it's the same requirement.
All right, okay.
Yep.
Jessica?
Hi, I'm just curious, kind of going back to the conversation earlier of have there also, like, if this were something to come into fruition, have there been discussions with the needs of LFJ to make sure that, like, just adding on these extra classrooms will let them have enough space for what they need, or do they need some of the classrooms back on the ECP wing, which then may require more ECP classrooms to be built? So has that conversation happened at all with LFJ and their needs? Because I know, like, I think the art room became a classroom this year. So even though their enrollment looks lower this year, it looks like different spaces are being used. But I know the kids get back in the library this year, which is great. So that's just something I've been wondering about. If we're adding, are we adding enough to meet the needs of where we're going to be in a few years?
I know that we were thinking that we would get an extra classroom. Well, we were hoping to get an extra classroom out of this. The minimum was to have 4 classrooms because that's the equivalent of what's in the ECP building now, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the minimum that we could have, and that would put everything under one umbrella. And then if we went for a larger, and I believe there were initially 3 options for this, and we're just looking at the less costly 2 options. And what do we have? We have is that 4 regular classrooms and some additional administrative space, correct?
Correct.
So if we need to make it larger in order to give Leah Jackson kindergarten and first graders back some of their classrooms, then the price tag obviously goes up.
I think, like, again, similar to the science labs of having those conversations, that, you know, this gives us a great ballpark. And I am curious, Mike, like, how much, when you updated the cost, did this go up versus when we did it a few years ago?
Pretty significantly. I think initially the cost per square foot for a new classroom was about $800 a square foot loaded.
Okay.
Now we're budgeting about $1,200 a square foot budgeted. Sorry, loaded. So
Okay.
it's a pretty significant jump.
And those things usually don't go down, or do they?
No, unfortunately, that was pre-COVID, 800.
Okay.
Now you're well into it. So that's unfortunately what we're getting now in today's dollars.
Okay, so I think this, like, gives us a rough idea, but again, same as the science, like, if it were to go to more details to know, like, would we be building, and it's like, oh, wish we had done one more room, because it would let us do this at LFJ. We could have a Mandarin room. We could have this. So that's just something to put on the table if this piece goes forward.
We did have some conversations when we put these schemes together, but that was, a couple of years ago. So I don't know if things have changed demographically for the district, and there's a change in classrooms that you would need or maybe not need. So it certainly can't hurt to revisit with the principal of that building.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that too. That is a good point. This module, if this was the direction we went, is it only for the 4 classes from the main building, or is this module going to be a wing, whatever the term is, off of Jackson, for all 9 ECP classes? If that is the scenario, then it will allow for the growth that we're seeing from ECP matriculating into Jackson. Because it will open up those 5 classrooms that are presently being used by ECP program. And then that overflow that we are beginning to experience, we will have the space. So I just want to be clear, the module, if that is something that is decided, is it just to get the 4 out, or is it for the whole ECP wing? To where It's a wing that we can walk straight through the hall, but it's all 9 classes. That, because putting the module and just moving 4 classes over there will not, to Ms. Muldoon's point, will not provide what we're gonna need over time for space if the enrollment goes higher, because it won't give us any extra rooms. There are no extra rooms the way, just moving them into the module, if I'm understanding, because this is the layman speaking. It does nothing for the growth that we're going to be experiencing in enrollment, because there still won't be an extra room. It's just putting them in 4 rooms that they're in right now.
So what is this? Is this the 4 rooms or is this
Yeah.
for all of
The whole ECP.
I see all of these dotted lines for future additions. Right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
So who's answering the question?
So I wasn't part of that discussion in 21 when this happened. I wasn't with the firm then, but I can probably ascertain that the discussion was if we went to and the need of 4 or 5 additional classrooms, where would we put them? And that's what you're seeing in the future edition, how that would lay out in the building. So it would be connected. You'd be creating an interior courtyard, and you would have this additional space now for these additional classrooms. But right now, this budget, this sketch is just giving you 4 additional classrooms and some ancillary support space as needed, with the connection corridor, of course, to get you to transverse from the existing building to the new wing.
So
And then
let's
the
be-
other thing that we had made provisions for was a future multi-purpose room for the kids to have as a lunchroom or to get some exercise or things like that. So those were things that were shown in that dotted area at the bottom of the floor plan.
So let's be very clear, though, there's a lack of understanding of what ECP actually is. And ECP is not just an open program where any and everybody should put their kids in because it's just there. This was a program that the school district had specialized to help children with early childhood and Head Start. And so at some point in the recent future, we made it available for all children to come in at all times. And we may need to look at whether or not we're truly using our community partners. And we always had community partners with Lois Bronze, I think what is the other one up on Dobbs Ferry Road? There was Our House or Our Family House. There were multiple,
and
there were multiple community partners that we utilized to also provide early childhood and Head Start for our students. When there were spacing issues, we would max out at a particular number and then have overflow. And the reason why the trustee keeps bringing it up, the reason why is because we may not be able to financially house a whole wing. I've also continued to say we need to bring in the Juniper Hill Civic Association residents into this conversation. This is their area of town. And during the larger bond back that failed in 2019, they had a lot of input. So we're all talking, but we really do need to hear from people. If we're going to expand this way, that's wonderful. It's a great idea, but there are also other options. And I just don't want us to keep focusing on the most expensive, which we would love to do, but it's not always feasible. All the buildings need a lot. So it's just, I just want to be the realistic. Sorry.
or ECP main. Or the other option is to leave ACP main open, then you're gonna have to have your waiver and possibly, and then have some ECP maintain the two facilities the way we did with the admin facility for all those years.
I don't think anyone wants the split program.
Okay,
Oh, they have hands raised.
Katie McGee? Katie?
Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry about that. I was curious about it has playground for pre-K. I thought we had a new playground for the pre-K there at Jackson.
We
I think the
did,
discussion was provide a separate playground just for the ECP children, so that they would be over and not be on the same playground as the kids from the main building. So we were asked to look at adding a playground there.
Right.
And that's what that represents.
Katie, I think this was done before the new playground was built. So there is actually a pre-K playground now that doesn't appear on your picture.
Okay.
So we checked that off.
that's a 500K savings right there, okay. Assuming we don't exceed capacity.
Right.
Good, okay, that was your comment?
Okay.
Chris?
So, thank Jessica and, trustee Mears both, commented on some things I wanted to talk about. Why can I not? Sorry, guys, with my son at school. So I just want to follow up that as far as the enrollment, we may be flat, but even if we're flat in the district, since I've been in the schools with my kids, there has always been a space issue at Jackson, which I think is again what Ms. Muldoon was alluding to, as far as music class or art class has always been on the stage. It's never had a classroom. It's either been pushed in or on the stage because other educational things were happening in the classrooms at the time. So no matter, you know, whether we're talking 4 classrooms and moving pre-K over, there were those flex spaces or that could be used for admin, nurse, therapy, et cetera. I think we need to remember that even if enrollment stays flat, we have a space issue no matter what at Jackson. And I also just want to reflect overall that I think, and Trustee Warner, correct me if I'm wrong, the purpose of this is just to kind of get ballpark numbers. Once we decide priorities and what the next one is, we'll go into a lot more detail on what stays, what goes. I think we're just supposed to be getting ballpark numbers and identifying in general, you know, what's phase 3, what's phase 4, what's phase 5. Just to kind of keep that top of mind. I think we're not going to hash out every single detail on all these plans today. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Other comments and questions regarding the ECP classrooms option? Hearing none, we move on to soccer fields. Soccer presentation 2 updated.pdf. Soccer presentation. And there's a
There it is.
yeah, there's an initially, you know, I think it was an assistant coach for the soccer team, Mel puts in. So there's a PowerPoint behind this. This is the cost sheet at the front end. Did we do anything to the soccer project presentation? Or is everything changed just in the top sheet?
The top sheet.
Okay, so you want to just page through the presentation just for a second so we can, right? So they talked about that's a table of contents. Okay. Right, so they talk about the total number of players having increased markedly over the past several years. So you had 32 players at one end in 2021, 41 the next year, 51 now. So it's a growing sport from our perspective. Next. Right. Okay, those are the purposes. JV coach and varsity assistant needed. Okay, so they're pushing for a staff increase. Without a proper soccer field, our school is missing out on the opportunity to foster teamwork, leadership, physical activity, and our students. I have been told that there has been some sort of study by students as one of their IB projects to determine whether an AstroTurf football, not football field, soccer field, American soccer, or a natural turf soccer field is better. And so at a future meeting, I think we need to invite the students in and let them give their 2 bits on this. And I'm not sure if that's part of the cost or not. Go ahead. Right, they're aerial photo of the current soccer field. Okay, and this is the one behind this is not the football field. This is the one over the top of where we put the fill in, the good fill from the Fill for Fields, thing that's right next to the backside of the high school. All right, go ahead. Facility that full, okay, so there, goals for the updates. They wanted full synthetic turf at that point. So the question is, does the study correspond to what they wanted? And bleachers, scoreboards, goals, okay, next. And then these are their estimates for what they thought the project would cost, and we'll go back up to your spreadsheet to look at what you think things come out to. All right, capital reserve grants, community outreach, yes, those are sources of funding. They have been overly optimistic, I think. Right, this will not happen in this time frame. Okay, but go ahead. And then they're making the point that that you actually, if you can host regional finals and state finals, and you can actually make the field a source of income, and as a result of having a better field. Okay, and that's fine. So now scroll back up to the top, and we can look at the. All right, Mike.
Sure.
Talk to us.
So this spreadsheet here corresponds to that one slide you saw with all the wish list items, the things that they asked about, with today's dollars. So the full synthetic turf field would be 1.185 million. New fencing, you can see all the numbers there, 55,000. New bleachers, netting, press box, new goals, scoreboard, team benches, and other miscellaneous site improvements. So the construction cost for that would come around 1.5 million. You add in your contingencies for general construction, you're at 1.7 million. And then you fully load that number for all your design, construction contingencies, escalation, fees, and soft costs. You're coming in at about $2.38 million for the field. There were two additional line items, if you saw on that slide, for I guess additional items that they were wish list. One was for lighting and sound for the field, so that's another 1.5 million. That's right, 1.1 million. The locker rooms, they estimated $1 million to $1.4 million. That's not probably even close, but we need more information and provide a budget for that. I need to know number of students, how big of a building, is it separate from the school, is it attached to the school? So there's a lot of variables that we just need to tone and get into if we're going to give you a number for that that's more realistic than the $1 million number. Is it a field house? Is it something to that effect? We don't know. So it was just taking that PowerPoint presentation and putting new numbers to it is what I did here. So bottom line, you're at about 2.4 million for the upgrades if you did all of them at the soccer fields there.
So the big ticket item appears to be the AstroTurf, the full synthetic turf field. So if they stayed with natural turf, because we don't know what the recommendation is at this point. If they stayed with natural turf, what happens? Does that number go away? Is there a lesser thing? We have to condition the natural field. What happens there?
It would go down. You probably still need to add some drainage potentially as we got into the guts of it to see. But I would assume that number would come down pretty significantly from what you're seeing there. We can get you that number if you want to just stay with a grass field, natural grass.
All right, get quote. Okay.
And if you decide to, if you want to break out any of these items and take them off the list, we can redo the fully loaded numbers for you so you have an idea of what that budget would be. You would just need to tell me what items you wanted to take off of this list, potentially.
Katie?
Yes, David, I'm glad you mentioned that. I think you mentioned that it's debatable about which is better, the turf or the grass, right? And that there's a student doing a research project about that. Because right before the meeting, when I saw that document, I looked it up, and I mean, there's some research out more injuries on turf and all of that. So we definitely would want to look into that, and not to mention the price.
So Ms. McGee, I don't know what the students found, but we have a new IB class called sports something. I will be butchering the name if I say it, but there's a new IB class that did research. You know, part of IB, education is they have to research stuff. So they did some research that they wanted to present and show to the board around this specific thing. And, I thought finance facilities is a good place because this is where we talk about this stuff. So they're gonna hopefully link up and be able to present that. I don't know what the research says or what they found. But.
All right, we'll schedule that for the next meeting then. Dr. Allen?
I think that we should first talk about giving a basic field, whether it's synthetic turf or not turf. But as far as putting up fencing, a press box, scoreboards, new benches, I think that's certainly something that does not need to be done immediately and could be added further down the line. I also want to remind us that there was some issue about contamination in that field from the material that was dumped there when that field was created. So I am concerned that we will run into some significant environmental issues when we start digging around in that area.
Absolutely right. Were you on the board then?
I was on the board as part of the cleanup effort after the Filford Fields controversy.
Okay.
So there was the clean dirt and there was the dirty dirt. Okay, so in return for the AstroTurf football field, we were to allow a Highway 287 widening project to dump some dirt that they needed to get rid of. And some of that dirt was contaminated. It had crushed asphalt in it. And the dirty dirt is now under the parking area for the football field. And the clean dirt, they actually dumped twice as much dirt as they were supposedly allowed to dump. And the clean dirt, the fill that was okay was the fill that's underneath the soccer field. So what we had to do as the cleanup for the parking lot area is we had to bury the dirt. So so basically, if you dig down, there should be no dirty dirt in the soccer field. Yeah. No contaminated fill in the soccer field. At least to the best of my recollection.
Well, perhaps there shouldn't be, but I think we absolutely need to be prepared to find out that there is.
So you want to test again? All right.
She's saying be prepared. She didn't say test again, David. She said prepare for possibly running into this issue when they start digging.
Okay.
We have included some contingency money in there for unsuitable materials that we find, but if you are aware of something, then I think it would make sense to have some environmental testing done now, because if there is going to be extensive cleanup that's going to be required, we need to make sure that we work that into the estimate.
Okay, Steve?
I was just gonna agree with what Dr. Allen was saying, that if we could figure out what the basic field needs are and hold off on the prep box and all the extracurricular, I'm sure that the kids would really want a great soccer field. And, people, go stand around in soccer places and can watch the game, and we can worry about building up those other funds later to get a press box, and even without additional lighting right away. Maybe, we can add the lighting if we know what the plan is.
Do something incrementally. Okay, good. Chris and then Aaron. Chris? Chris Vallon?
Sorry, working on it. Okay, just first, what space are we talking about? Are we talking about converting the existing soccer field, which is a grass field, to AstroTurf? Or are we talking about redoing the turf at the football field? Because I hear different people speaking about different physical spaces. So I want to know what the architect's dollar amounts were based on? Which physical space?
It was the field that you currently use as a soccer field, which is just adjacent to the high school.
The grass field. Okay, thank you. Fine. I will just say as the parent of a soccer player, I do have concerns about safety on turf. I've seen my share of AstroTurf burns because soccer players do not wear all the protection that football players wear. I'll just leave the rest of my comments on that unstated for now. And I just want to, again, refocus us on big picture, high level, setting priorities, needs versus wants. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron?
So new member here, just trying to get my feet wet and understand everything. I apologize if this is a redundant question. As a former high school soccer player, I recall fondly playing in on the football field. At that time, it was a grass field. And I'm just wondering why that's not an option here if we're talking, turf, and I understand that's turf too. It has all the amenities. It seems quite basic. I'm sure there's a good answer here, but I'm scratching my head thinking about it.
Yeah, I know that there are some soccer games that are played on our AstroTurf football field. I also know that the AstroTurf football field is nearing end of life.
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know if there are problems with the scheduling two different games at the same time, or whether I don't know why it's as difficult a problem as it is. So we could probably talk to our staff about that. Unless you guys, do you know anything?
No, I don't really know anything, but if the football field's ending near of life and you're talking about creating a new soccer field, wouldn't it make sense to try and create a situation that can be dual purpose for that and others? I'm sure that there are reasonable answers here. I just don't know them, and I'm just positing a question because it seems like killing two birds with one stone would be something that this school district could desperately need.
In which case, if what you're saying makes sense, and again, we don't know yet. If what you're saying makes sense, we could then spend the money on upgrading the one field that we do have instead of developing the second field. So we need to find out whether or not that is in fact a practical option.
Also, we do practices. We have multiple teams. We have boys teams, girls team, varsity, junior varsity, modified. I don't want to say like just neglect all the fields that we have, but I do think if it's a priority issue, then we have to do what you're saying. I will say then we probably need to pave that road to the football field if we're gonna.
It may be a fact the fact that you're sitting there with your locker rooms right next to the high school, and you can run soccer there, but you can't really run the other stuff and therefore we go the extra distance to get out there where the football field is far away from the high school. And if I had my choice, I'd rather be closer to my school building. Right. So we'll see what they say.
And just on that point on the multiple soccer teams, I fully understand that. Maybe when you talk about press boxes and bleachers and all of those things, that strikes me as like a game situation. So maybe for the scheduling issue, that can be resolved by you only play the games on the actual field, but it's a lot, I would imagine, cheaper to have a surface that is not dangerous to practice on, that is adjacent to the field that is played games on. That would seem to me to be perhaps a much cheaper way to go about this. And then you have these practice fields in this area where you're talking about building a new soccer field, and that would be perhaps much cheaper to do. And then you just have this one field with all of the goal, the press boxes, the scoreboards, the bleachers, all of that.
Makes sense to me. All right, we will investigate.
If I may, Trustee
Yes.
Warner. So thank you, Aaron, for stating all that. That would, I completely agree. It makes more sense to redo the field that's at the end of life. Just again, as a soccer parent. Most of the games this past year and even the year before, Mr. McCoy did a great job in finding a different space for the football team to practice so that more soccer games were actually held on that turf field and the practices were on the grass field. Modified is always on grass. It's a smaller field for that age group anyway. And I think this year they did a pretty good job of making sure both the girls teams and the boys teams were on the turf. Not 100% of the time, but a lot more than in earlier years. So to me, that makes the logical sense because more sports then could use that refurbished, renewed turf for games as necessary. I just don't know how having 2 turf fields at this time with all of the needs of our district makes any sense. So thank you.
Thank you. I have 2 turf fields. Okay. All right, so that concludes our main topic. So let's go back to the agenda and we'll now it's like 10 after 8. I'd like to just poll real quick before we move on. You know, we did say we had 3 questions. The first one was what projects? We've gone over the projects in some detail now. When should phase 3 begin? Planning should begin immediately because it takes so long to get from the planning stage to the construction phase. And then how much is a risk? And the consensus last time was a $5 to $8 million bond size is the safest path. We have $5.9 million in our reserve. Capital Reserve Fund. So given all of that, I'm just gonna do a little straw poll here. This is not a final vote on a proposal for a recommendation to anybody. I just want to go around and do just of the people here, because it's not an official vote. What's your favorite project of the list? So I'm gonna start here.
Science labs.
Science labs, that's one. For me, the science labs.
Mr. Puglisi?
I think the science labs are also important, but you know, we also probably want to work on, if we're gonna do the casework up against the windows that are leaking. We might want to do like one elevation of windows and incorporate that into the project also, so that the new casework doesn't get damaged by the leaking windows.
You're like my most difficult trustees. Pick one, it's like windows, he says windows.
Well, like, you know, at least for the science rooms that you're going to the casework, because the casework goes up against the windows that are leaking.
Adjacent.
It's hard to do.
I wouldn't want to spend money on the nice refurbishing the classrooms and the casework and have the
yes
everything get wet.
Lisa.
Pick one.
Labs, okay. Dr. Iverson.
I would go with the labs. I really would like to get, that's wherever, I just would love to get ECP.
Pick one. You like the trustees that don't make.
Well, ECP classrooms doesn't make sense if we're not going for.
This is not an official vote. I know we're a bunch of lions, but I just.
Science lab.
They say the business law.
What do you think?
I honestly think of the windows because like Dennis said.
Right.
I was saying.
There's no wrong answers. Everything needs to be done.
All right, so that's the exterior shell.
Could you pull the windows out of the exterior shells and just do that?
It's the biggest ticket item there. You have, like you said, you have to take different wings and deal with that.
Got it.
Okay,
Okay.
Do you have an opinion, Luke?
Look like.
Luke says he should.
ECP classrooms.
Okay. Okay, can you bring us to the gallery view so we can see everybody?
Sure, yes. Hold on, let me I'll stop sharing.
Or, oh, wait, do people need to have the,
We can leave it up. This is gallery, this is
all
everyone.
right, Katie?
I'm a little confused because some of the items are much lower than the others. So why we have to pick one as our, you want to hear our ultra first priority?
All would be
Is
great.
that what you want?
You all would be great trustees. This is my problem as a president. David asked for an unofficial straw polling of your most favorite project, to pick just one. What's the one, if you had to pick one thing, Ms. McGee, what would it be? There's no wrong answer.
Yeah, I'm looking at the list.
Want to think about it?
We'll come back.
We can move
Come
on.
back.
I think like Mr. Pugliese said, science labs with those windows replaced.
Thank you.
Okay, Jessica?
Maybe she took a break.
Jessica, can you hear us? She may have stepped away.
Maybe come back to her. She had to step.
Okay. Dr. Allen?
You know, I'm going to say science labs with the
Okay.
proviso that we revisit what we want to do so that we can bring the cost down so that it will be acceptable to the community that has to pay for it.
Okay.
If you prioritize the science rooms and we didn't have to do all of them at the same time, and
Then
we have
the price tag would come
$5.9
down and
million, you might be able to do two things.
It's all true.
Yeah.
It's all true. Let me complete my point. Aaron?
So I feel like I don't have enough facts here. Even though you guys went through it all, which I really appreciate as a new member who hasn't been in the loop, I really, well, I'm not a member, but as a new citizen who's interested in this committee, I really don't feel like I know as much as I should. So I'm going to give a diplomatic answer of whatever provides the greatest benefit to the most students.
From what you heard tonight, Mr. Schwartz, what would be your, pick one thing, you heard a lot tonight.
I did, and what really struck me is the school needs a lot of or the school district needs a lot of investments, needs a lot of community buy-in, and there needs to be, you know, some reduction of cost too as part of all that. Is there an option to go back to what didn't pass in 2019 and revisit that? Because I'd be all about that.
Okay, so what happened in 2019 was $114 million, and that came down from a much larger price tag to what some people thought would work. And the net result of that was we were beaten in the polls by a 2-to-1 margin.
Sure.
We got more people to vote yes on this thing than have voted at any time in the last 20 years in the district, and twice as many people came out and voted no. And there were some people who were unhappy about there not being enough sidewalks for the centralization, but mostly it was that the price tag is just too big. So the follow-on has more or less been, okay, we can't fix everything all at once. And even though we kind of said that if you swept everything aside and built everything from scratch, it would be cheaper. The price tag of that is too big. So the idea is fix what you got and try and make incremental progress toward your long-term goal. So for example, this ECP classroom option, the idea was to eventually get all of the ECP students into the same school, into VF Jackson, or into one school with more grade levels. And that would be an incremental movement toward this sort of one campus, unified, modern program. Okay.
Then my vote tonight would be for that.
Okay.
The ECP again.
Okay, so we've got an ECP. Ben. Got it. Okay, Gabriella?
Sorry, I was unmuting. I go with the labs, but to include the windows.
Okay. All right, Chris?
I'm not going to do what Tracy says. She can be annoyed with me. I do not want to erode our capital reserve fund. I think we need to keep building up for some of these larger projects, which will be a difficult ask for a big bond. when we're talking about the shells or the ECP classrooms. So if phase 3 ends up being something other than what I'll name, then I just need to have that stipulation in there. I do think I am concerned about our space. I think the best place to start with our space issues is building an extension at Lee F. Jackson. And then from there, different things can get moved around. If I'm having a choice too, I don't want to do any science labs without drilling down to, let's maybe start with 3 labs, 1 for chem, 1 for earth science, 1 for biology or physics. You know, let's focus on, let's bring that down. And I don't want to do any labs without doing something on the shell. So I'll agree with the windows or the masonry in that wing or whatever we can do in that wing. No wants without needs, although that would be a need too. Was that too long-winded, Tracy?
I think there was an ECP in there.
I heard her say ECP.
She just wants my yes, no. Okay. All right. So ECP is my, I'm concerned with space.
Okay, so now, thank you. So now I think we should swing back around to Katie McGee. Katie, have you thought
Jessica.
further?
Oh, Jessica.
Or Jessica Muldoon?
I think you mean Jessica.
Well, oh, I'm sorry, Jessica Muldoon, sorry.
Let's go.
Chris Allen raised hand. And Jessica. Yes, Chris.
So while Jessica's tuning in, I also would want to know for the next meeting of the science lab, labs, or like what is considered a repair and would be able to come out of repair reserve instead of the capital reserve. I'm very interested in that information.
And if we have what, $700,000 or so in the repair reserve?
I don't remember what's in there. Hopefully we get that update as well at the next meeting. So
I know that much. Okay.
Thank you.
Versus capital EXP only. Okay. Okay. Jessica? I think that's last call. Okay, so I've got 7 people for the science labs, 2 for exterior, primarily exterior windows, 3 for ECP classrooms, and some of the science lab folks, I think 3 of them said science labs and the adjacent windows. So before I go off and make a giant matrix with your priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, and the greatest, the best total wins and all that stuff, I wanted to see if we're already clustered around a particular solution. Yeah, and so it's looking like science labs and ECP mostly. Okay, fair enough. Thank you. And let's move on quickly so that we can dispose of the balance of this of the agenda and go and get out of here.
It's getting late.
It's 8:30.
Yeah.
I just had some questions, but go ahead. What were we gonna do?
Okay. Before we end, okay. Fine, phase 2 construction project. Briefly, Mike, can you tell us what has changed since last time on the major project? I think there were 2 items.
Yeah, nothing drastically has changed other than we received technical review for the fire hydrant project, which means we are still waiting on the PM sign off and fiscal review. So that was one item. And the other was that we submitted the track, tennis courts, and roof at Woodlands last week to SED.
Okay, so that's first half of phase 2. Great. So it's all in there. Good. Smaller facilities projects.
Okay.
Dennis.
District-wide fire inspections were completed for all buildings. Our certificates of occupancy have been issued and posted. ECP Maine, the additional storms in December and January have not resulted in any new leaks or drainage issues this month. Baseboard heat in the main office area appears to be cleared and fixed. We believe that there was sludge in the line from the renovations. LF Jackson, damaged boiler will be replaced as part of the energy performance contract, no change. There's another minor leak in the cafeteria area. It is to be repaired when the ice and snow melt the roof. Highview, no water in the OT and PT room after the last two major storms. Due to the heavy rains on the September 13th and 29th. To minimize future problems, we need to assess the drainage for the grounds. We haven't had a problem with, it seemed to be the big storms. The 4.5 inches of rain was the magic number. The smallest storms of 2.5 inches, it seems to be holding its own. We had some exterior lighting replaced in the front, north, and rear side of the building. Let's see, RJ Bailey, one boiler, they're still working on the tubes. We had a header valve replaced over the brake. And new gym pads, the cost was higher than estimated. That's still on here. We're seeking what our budget looks like in the spring. Woodlands, we had a new guardrail installed in the administrative parking lot. Several lights in the large and small gym were replaced with LED lights. Broken windows in the common areas. One window was replaced. The other vendor, fabricated the window wrong. It's still being fabricated. Security vestibule, the concrete is been poured. The hangars are ready for installation. I don't know if there's any updates on that. Maybe the guys for BBS.
I took pictures today. Do you wanna show those pictures? Yeah. Here, bring up the pictures. There's just a few pictures today.
And no more flooding issues during the last storm at Woodlands.
Well, that's great.
Okay, there's the vestibule. So the concrete is set. And you're waiting for the storefront to be plugged in, right? You can see the footprint of where it's supposed to be.
So how long are we talking about?
The last I heard, there was some the fabricators, the guys who install the storefront, they were on other jobs. That's
Well, then let's get some other fabricators. What is it? I mean, this has been years in the making. I don't know if people understand that this started the same time all the other schools,
prior to phase one, yeah.
Prior to phase, so I mean, this is insane, the way everyone's coming in and out of the building. You know, I'm always concerned about safety, you know, dismissal, it's just a mess. So how do we?
Mike or Fred, any updates that you're aware of with the storefront?
No, last we heard the same thing you just heard, is that the contractor is trying to schedule his sub to install. Everything's fabricated. I think with the weather and other commitments currently, he's not commenting or giving us a schedule. We'll ask again. We've been asking a lot. But we'll go back to the surety as well to try to get them to put some pressure on him to get it done.
Yeah, because other districts are getting construction done. The weather sucks, but it does still move. So we need to, you know, our district is just as important. And we need to, this is a safety vestibule. But we also have some other safety things that happen when we had to move crowds of people around now to deal with this. So, okay.
Okay, yeah, go ahead and show us the other pictures because we're. Nope. Okay. There you go, there's your guardrail. So there's an embankment. And depending on where you are in the embankment, there have been people, I guess, cases where people have kind of overshot a little bit. And so now there's a 160-foot guardrail that right out here that prevents that from happening anymore. So thank you for doing that.
Okay, the mansion, the punch list work continues and the bus garage.
The mansion.
Yep, some lights and ballast were replaced in the garage area.
I should say, remember we had a couple of downspouts that didn't go anywhere, so there's one of them, so that's fixed, it goes into the pavement now. And then there's a second slide there, that back corner where it was, you see how there's a second pipe off in the corner before? So now they filled it in, so it goes all the way down into the ground, and then the pipe goes under the embankment and comes out further down the slope. So mansion drainage is better. Go ahead.
Where are all the slides?
That's it.
That's
Okay,
all I have for my small projects.
great. Lisa?
There's been no change in any of the grants that we've received from any of the legislatures. I do know that I received today to approve the purchase order for the RJ Bailey Auditorium seating.
Oh, okay.
So that went through that committee that Principal Rossi and BBS and had put together, so that is now will be in the works. And I'm still filing some of the paperwork for some of these grants. I just file the paperwork that come back with questions, so I've been doing that with Mr. Messina and with Dennis. American Rescue Plan, there's no update there. Amy filed an FS 25 to do a drawdown, so we're just waiting for that to come through. And as far as the 24-25 budget is concerned, we know a couple of items. We got our tax-based growth factor about a month ago. CPI just came in, it's 4.12%, which means that we will be capped at the 2% to use in the calculation. Doesn't mean that the tax cap is 2%. 2% is the percentage we will use in that calculation. Dr. Iverson, Dr. Macaluso and I have met with all of the principals and directors and have asked them for their wish list. If we had a perfect world and had all the money in the world, what would your wish list be? And we have gone over that with the board, and we will be meeting with staff again to try to hone that down to what is exactly needed. Yesterday or the day before, Tuesday maybe, what's it, Thursday? Tuesday, the governor had her State of the Union, and our first round of state aid numbers were released. It is always traditionally that the most pessimistic state aid numbers come from the governor. And a lot of districts, including Greenburgh, have seen a reduction in state aid. So under the state constitution, the governor is required to propose a balanced budget, even if the final enacted budget is not balanced. For the 24-25 school year, the Division of Budget is projecting that New York State will have a $4.3 billion deficit that they need to close within the budget. So to achieve this, Governor Hochul is proposing a mix of changes in revenues and savings. As far as schools are concerned, $692 million in savings from school aid will be comprised of $294 million in reduction of foundation aid, excuse me, and $398 million in other actions, the largest which is an increase in the estimated revenues to education from the lottery fund. And if anybody knows, when that was enacted, the lottery fund was supposed to give additional money. And if you look at the calculation, it doesn't, it supplants money. So the budget states that under the governor's proposal, school aid would grow by $825 million, which is approximately 2.4%. This is significantly less than the $1.2 billion that was anticipated and discussed in the November database. 2.1% of the aggregate increase in school aid can still translate into a reduction for many schools through a combination of the governor's proposed changes to foundation aid. So what she is proposing here is that she's proposing two items: a reduction in the inflation factor used to update the formula, which is done every year, the elimination of that, and the elimination of the hold harmless, act or, provision. For inflation, the formula includes an inflation factor over the previous year. Every year that happens. Under the current law, the adjustment would be 4.1%. The governor is proposing to decrease that to 2.4%, which would cut $250 million out of state aid for schools across the state. As far as hold harmless is concerned, hold harmless has been in place for many decades. And what that means is whatever state aid that we are getting in the 23-24 year, we cannot get any less for foundation aid in the next year. The governor wants to remove hold harmless. So by removing hold harmless, if you look at any one of these, if you specifically look at Greenburgh, you'll see that right now in the governor's proposal, we're taking a $508,000 increase, and almost every other school district in Westchester County is also taking a hit and losing money. It's been, well, you said increase. I'm sorry, a decrease. If you watch, I watched the news this morning, and there are a lot of associations, the School Boards Association, the association I believe belong to, school boards, and I'm sure the Superintendents Association are all advocating that we lobby our legislature to not put this into effect and to keep hold harmless in effect. So, but right now, as I said, these are the most current numbers. These are the first round of numbers, and they're usually the most pessimistic numbers that will be released. We obviously haven't received what the Senate or the Assembly are proposing. Then the two sides will come together and hopefully do a budget. Once that happens, then we will receive our final numbers.
Okay.
We are working on the first round of a budget proposal that we probably will be getting to the board or to the committee in February.
Good. I had one question before you move on to the schedule, and that is, we had asked about enrollment numbers, and we had a couple of months ago, it was about 1655. And
you had 22, 23, and 23, 24. I sent you
right,
21,
you said
22
21, 22, and it was right. But 23, 24 are around 1700. So now, are the numbers that the state has for us back at the 1655 level, such that are we at 1700 now? So could we end up with more aid than we think?
No.
Based on there being more students?
No.
Okay.
Because the numbers are frozen at a certain date. It was important to get numbers in by the November database. That's what gives us these numbers.
So it can help us in a future year, but not this year.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you. Go ahead.
You're welcome. The board has to adopt the budget by no later than April 16th. And that usually is done on that date because that's the date that you vote on collectively as school districts in Westchester County on a BOCES budget. The budget hearing will be May 7th. Budget vote is May 21st. And as I said, we're developing the budget now, and I would definitely think we could give some kind of presentation in February.
Great. Chris, is there anything new for the audit committee?
No news, just what you have here, which is the same as every month. We are still going through the New York State audit. They're on the last part, which is time and materials. The internal audit committee, the audit committee will not meet to review the internal audit until sometime in the spring. And if any member of the public wants to join the audit committee, please email me, cvalin@greenburghcsd.org. We're looking for 2 interested community members. Thank you.
Great.
I just have a question.
Sure.
So, I didn't get a chance to ask this, but I'm wondering what's happening with the school play. I did get contacted by a mom who said that the kids don't have their stuff for the school play because it wasn't paid for, but it's in March. I don't know if you guys know anything about it.
No one do.
No. So can we, that's why I brought it up, because I don't know if there's something that has to be paid for. That in order for that to happen, I don't know if you guys look at that with the budgets
You
or.
received purchase orders related to the
I
musical?
have no idea.
Okay, so
I
the
have, this
question,
is the first I've heard anything that they don't,
So
and I don't even know what it is.
mid-
And I
mid-January.
don't think that, I'm not gonna say that that's not true, but we just approved going to Lehman College and getting
To borrow
to
some.
borrow stuff from them, so things are.
To borrow stuff from who?
Lehman College, props. That we
Right,
got.
she
So
said
I
they
think
have
so,
no script for the play and no.
well, they need to put a purchase order in.
Well, listen, I
secure
understand
it.
it's
I don't know.
process, but what happens in situations like these where, there's a play in March, it's a district-wide play. Elementary kids can come, it's, what's the play, Newsies this year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so it's a big play that, can be done. So I don't know the whole purchase order process anymore, but when we're talking budget in the finance committee, how do we make sure these yearly events like plays are paid for so that there's no disruption to the students?
We just have to.
They need to contact us.
yeah,
Who?
Whoever's contacting you, they should be contacting you.
Tell mom to call you off.
Well, I did get,
Isn't
I
there a
know,
stipend?
I
Isn't there a
got,
stipend
I
for,
got a call from a parent
Oh.
that asked me to move the date from March, and I have nothing to do with that.
Oh, I
That's
don't know.
the only inquiry that I got.
The inquiry needs to go to Ms. Claire Cronin and we don't, so if you can send us the name of the parent, we'll have them reach out to the parent, but this is our first time.
No, I don't give names of parents, but I'm gonna tell the parents to call, business office.
No, they should call Mr. Smith.
Oh, call Mr. Smith, okay.
if the business office reacts to a purchase order, my question is.
Mr. Smith has to put in the purchase order.
Okay.
Principal or purchase order, but again, I still didn't hear the answer to my question about the purchase order, because that's a process. I'm keep looking at the screen because I'm waiting for Chris to chime in about the process, because I know she knows it well.
So you know that someone gets a stipend for, and it may be Claire Cronin, that someone gets a stipend for being in charge of the spring musical. And then that person is the person who's gonna generate the request, and then it's gonna go through the principal and then work its way to the business office.
Right, but if whether it's, I don't wanna implicate any persons, but if it just doesn't happen in a timely manner for whatever reason, we still have certain things that have to happen every year for the students that happen. This is a district-wide thing. I mean, we don't even have a vestibule, so I don't know how people are gonna file in for a play. But what if the person never does it and we're now upon March? I mean, there's no fail-safe for these type of yearly things that happen, whether it's a play or something else, graduation. I
That
mean,
happens through the principal's office.
Can we just confirm it's accurate?
Sure.
Let's just first make sure that's accurate. Ms. Cronin has been doing a musical forever.
Yeah, I
And
agree,
she
I
put
agree.
her materials in, the plays have gone off without a hitch. With uniforms with props and all. I can't imagine this year will be any differently, or be different. I'm sure she's done, I don't know what, where things stand, but it's just worth stopping and letting us find out where this is. I don't see her putting on a play that's not well, with all the props and all. She's done it so well in the past. I don't know why this year would be different.
Are you saying, trustee Mears, that they don't have the scripts yet?
That's what that's what she's asking.
I will find out. I mean, because the
Has it called
decision for the
principal?
play was made back.
She said, I don't know, the scripts were ordered in September.
Yeah, that's what
They
they
don't have the scripts.
Please, this is really not relevant to the work of the entire committee. So can we finish this discussion outside of committee, please?
Yes, we can continue. I'm just wondering what the process is for when you were talking about the budget and the budget, what is the process for yearly events and yearly things? if purchase orders and stuff aren't done. So you're saying it's at the building
It's
level.
very likely that the person at the building level goes and pulls up the purchase order from last year and uses it as a model or whatever paperwork they've got.
Okay.
But they have to make a submission. Chris, did you want to say something? Carol, did you have?
Yeah, I agree with Carol. We can fill up on the details as far as, but I will fill you in on one thing. There was a warrant report item for this thing in the November warrant report. I think we could follow up on this particular instance offline as far as the process. Yes, I think there is continual retraining and reminders to building administration all throughout the district on how to do purchase orders in a timely manner. So maybe a reminder is due. Thank you.
We did put together a purchasing policy manual that is 90 pages long that has been distributed to all principals and their secretaries. So they have that, so they know how to do and process a purchase order.
Okay, we'll move on.
Okay, good. So, 5-year facilities plan, I don't think I think we'll just move on past that for this time. Let's go to the Edgemont Incorporation issue. And so the Edgemont Incorporation, the idea that the community of Edgemont may possibly incorporate itself as a separate village with its own village government and services and withdraw from the services of the would have a negative impact on anyone that's inside the same tax base. Including us and Dr. Carol Allen. We've been pushing on the reforming the process by which village incorporation takes place, and there's legislation involved. And Dr. Allen, could you tell us the latest and greatest of what's going on with this issue?
Briefly, a new village incorporation process was signed into law as of January 1, 2024. But the Edgemont section of Greenburgh has been explicitly exempted from the new rules through the year 2040. The town board feels that this is an unfair law because it does not provide equal protection to everybody in the town of Greenburgh, and they are hiring an attorney to litigate this legislation should there be a petition filed under this law. That's it in a nutshell.
And is there any action that you would like anyone to take regarding this?
At this point, we are asking people to write to Assemblyman Fred Thiel, who heads the local governance committee in the assembly, because the chapter amendments that pertain to this issue are being held in his committee at the moment. If anyone is interested in doing so, please send me an email and I can send you further details about what we are hoping you will include in such correspondence. My email is carolballenmd@yahoo.com. CAROLB as in boy, ALLEN as in Nancy, M as in Mary, D as in dog.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this? Are there any other concerns that anyone wishes to raise before we adjourn? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to adjourn? Wait, oh, go ahead.
Hi, sorry to keep us from adjourning. Quick question, is there any way that we could do a walkthrough? It doesn't have to be as thorough as the one you guys do in the opening school year, but at some point in the spring, and thinking about this, and I think something that came up last meeting of we're doing all this work, but because the paperwork's working through the system, like none of it's necessarily apparent to the community. So I'm just thinking of like a walkthrough where we could highlight some of either if anything has been done at that point, like the vestibule, or where the things will be done. And it could be open to the community. And so it also, as we're getting ready for the next budget vote and potentially bringing another bond in the next year or so, that we could highlight and just bring up where we're at and what we've done and what we hope to do next. So I don't know if that's something we can just kind of think about and see if it might be able to get on the calendar, like April or something around there.
Yeah.
But that's a good idea just for general practice, like we do the opening walk through the beginning of the year, we see all the nice stuff that we've worked on, but maybe throughout the year, even 2 walkthroughs, just the financial facility committee maybe, and see the areas that we're actually spending hours talking about, like visibly have an option for people to.
We can have a walkthrough, we can take one of these meetings and make the meeting a walkthrough, we don't have to sit here and do this.
Right, that's true.
Okay, so let's tentatively look at the month of April as a possibility, that would make this happen prior to the May vote. Okay, Chris?
Yeah, I really like that idea. I definitely think it should be before the May vote so people can see what they're getting with their money. And I just want to point out, Ms. Raymond did a great job, I thought, before the roof vote. She put together a PowerPoint. I want to say it was kind of what projects have we already completed, and here's some photos of what we're about to do, why we're asking this. That nice summary I thought was really concise, and maybe to your point, Trustee Mears, about having this as a regular thing, maybe that could be part of the overall packaging. That's all.
Good idea. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Then we are adjourned, 8:49 PM. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everybody. Stay warm.
Thank you, everybody.
Good
Have a
night.
Good evening.